And
We are live.
count all four principals.
Hi there.
Okay, it is 6:30, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. We'll have roll call first. Mr. Lewis?
Weber,
Here.
Nystrom,
Here.
Teben,
Here.
Pritchard,
Here.
Melhouse.
Here. Okay, recognition of visitors. I am looking right now. I do not, we have no visitors in the audience here, and I do not see anyone on our live content, so we'll move on to consideration of the agenda. Mrs. Tripa, have there been any changes, modifications to the agenda?
No, the agenda has not changed at all.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda as printed.
Move to approve the agenda as printed.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Pritchard, seconded by Mrs. Teben to approve the agenda as published. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Hearing from of delegations. Again, I see no one here. So we will move on to the routine business. Could I have a motion for the routine business?
I move to accept the routine business except for a payment to Pritchard Brothers in the amount of $1,635.76.
I
Is there a
second.
second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Stevens, seconded by Dr. Nystrom to approve the consent agenda with the removal of the Pritchard bill. Is there any further discussion or anything else anyone would like to withdraw from the consent agenda? Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda with the exception of the Pritchard bill, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Now I'll entertain another motion.
I move to accept the Pritchard Brothers bill of $1,635.76.
I'll second that.
Okay, it has been moved by Mrs. Stevens, seconded by Reverend Weber to approve the Pritchard's bill of $1,635.76. Any further discussion? Not hearing any further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And abstentions?
Aye.
Let the record show Mr. Pritchard abstained. The other four of us voted in favor. Motion passes. Next, we'll move on to board resignation. I'll let Mr. Reverend Weber, you want to speak to this?
Yeah, so it was 2 weeks ago I announced my resignation. My family is moving to Ankeny, accepted a job at Prairie Ridge Church in Ankeny, and we'll be moving on. We close on the 25th and move on the 26th. So,
Okay. So basically, what we will need here is a motion to accept Reverend Weber's resignation effective September 26th, 2020.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Dr. Nystrom, seconded by Ms. Stevens to accept Reverend Weber's resignation effective September 26, 2020. Any further discussion? I would just like to say, Reverend Weber, we've appreciated all you've done for the board, all your thoughtful deliberations and time you spent helping this board through a trying time with the COVID crisis. And I wish you well in your future endeavors down in Ankeny.
yeah, and I'll just add thank you for allowing me to. We got a bad echo. One of us was echoing bad. Yeah. I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be part of this, and just the time that I was able to spend on the board, just the learning that I was able to do through this process. So yeah, just thank you for everybody.
Thank you, Joey.
Good luck, Joey.
Okay, now, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. Next is the board member appointment process. And we have a great problem, is that 2 weeks ago, we mentioned at our meeting that Reverend Weber was resigning. We said, if you're interested in fulfilling a seat, please contact the school administration or go to the website. And it is my understanding it closed today. And how many applicants do we have? 13. We've had 13 applicants for his position. This kind of leaves us in a little bit of a quandary as to what to do when you have 13 people. It's great to have so many people that are interested, but obviously we only have one seat. And so I've spoken with Mr. Hilliker, who'll be joining us later on from the Iowa State School Board Association, and Mr. Tripa, and what our plan is that all 13 applicants, they submitted an application and answered several questions. Those applications will be reviewed in the next couple of weeks by the board members. And hopefully at a meeting 2 weeks from tonight, about 7:30, hopefully we'll announce the final time and date. The board will meet briefly. To each board member will just say who their top 3 choices are. And we'll try to narrow it down to 3 people, and then have a meeting a week later to be able to visit with those 3 people and select one person to fulfill Reverend Weber's term. Now, I'm hoping that all 13 of those people understand is that This will be a term that will only run until the next school board election, which is in November 2021. At that time, this person would have to rerun for that seat for the final 2 years of that term. And also there would be 2 seats coming up at that election. That would be Mr. Pritchard and myself, our 2 seats. So there would be 3 seats open in November of 2021. 2 of them would be for 4-year terms, and the third one would be for a 2-year term. That's just the way the state law works as far as filling empty seats on a school board. This is not the first time something like this has happened in the state, and I'm sure it won't be the last. I think it has happened at least once in my recent memory in the last 10 years' time. So, is there any questions from anyone? Any comments from Julie, Ms. Struble?
Just that I think it's a great problem to have, that we have so many interested parties in the school board. It is definitely, those of you that serve on the school board know the amount of time and deliberation that takes place. So to have so many community members willing to step up is a testament to the district.
Yes, it's a nice problem to have, as opposed to having to call people and knock on doors and say, would you please, please, please serve on the school board? We need some person. This time we've just got the opposite, but the board will sort through this and come up with a decision here and be able to swear that person in by our next board meeting in October. So we have technically we have 30 days from the date of the effective date of Reverend Weber's resignation, which would be September 26th. So we'd have until October 26th, but my goal is to have someone sitting on the board for our next monthly meeting in October, second Monday in October. Okay. With that being said, next on the agenda is our school board goals. Let Ms. Tripa go over those.
Okay, at our last board meeting, we did discuss the district goals or board goals that we were going to move forward with for the 2021 school year. And what we landed with were 3 goals. The first being student achievement, as that is the reason we are all here, is to make sure that we are able to educate our students to the highest levels. So the first goal would be to increase the number of students that achieve the benchmarks identified on redefining ready indicators. And I had spoken to that particular document at the last board meeting. Goal number 2 would be to continue with our work in family engagement and communication and increasing our collaborative culture with two-way communication. So not just the district being able to express information to our constituents, but also being able to hear what our constituents have to share with us. And that's the, part of the reason why we wanted to enact the surveys at the beginning of the year that we did, so that we were making a decision, not just from the school perspective, but from all stakeholder perspectives. And the third goal being the facilities budget management, to build a new elementary school, replacing Lincoln and Page elementary schools while maintaining a positive fiscal position remains a goal for our district and our board. So those were the 3 main categories that we explored last time. And then we did have subcategories under each of those, but that's a summary of what we discussed last time.
Board members, any further discussion on these goals? I believe the link is available on the agenda. For those of you listening at home, you go to our board agenda and go down to item 3-03, and there's a link there. If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the school district goals for the 2020-2021 school year.
Pam's mute, but I think she's moving.
Sorry, I was muted. I move to approve the goals for the 2021 school year.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Dr. Nystrom moved and Mr. Pritchard seconded a motion to approve the school board goals for 2020, 2021. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. Which leads us to our next item on the agenda, the school superintendent evaluation board goal alignment. Every year, the school superintendent is in the state of Iowa, it's required that the board do an evaluation. There's many different forms of evaluations. I've sat on the board for 7 years now, and we've gone from 12-page evaluations now that were very confusing. Now, last time we had about a 4-pager evaluation. And since we have 3 new school board members, I've asked Julie Trifa asked, and I agreed to have Harry Hillenthal from the State School Board Association, specializes in board relations, come and speak with the board and go over the basics of the superintendent evaluation. I'm going to turn it over to Julie and Harry. I think he's on here someplace.
Harry is with us, and that's exactly right. So one of the things that we wanted to do tonight and just share publicly kind of how the board goals and the superintendent evaluation align. Of course, there's still always a closed session for that evaluation for the board to share their thoughts with regard to my performance. But this is something that we felt was important to share with all stakeholders so that everyone understands kind of how this works and how we utilize these board goals to help drive the work that I'm doing as a superintendent as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Harry now.
Great, thank you much. And thanks, Mitchell, for ensuring that I'm able to share and everything else. So I'm delighted to talk with you a little bit tonight and actually hear you talk a fair amount. And you're at a good place in terms of with any superintendent, but particularly when a superintendent's new, when a board and a district have clear goals in the direction you're headed is charted, it makes it a lot more realistic and practical to sync up or align your superintendent's work with those goals. So good for you guys. There's a number of times I may be working with a board team where the district goals haven't been set yet, and that makes it hard to have clear goals for the superintendent. So that the 3 big areas in red, we're going to draw on these and kind of work back and forth between these big areas and the materials that I sent to you or included for tonight's conversation time. So I would ask this of you first is in the materials that were provided, my contact info is on the cover page, so email and phone. You reach out to me anytime, please. I'm anticipating over the next 1 to 2 weeks, I'll send a short follow-up letter that kind of summarizes our conversation tonight. And I would ask you on the second page, and I'm displaying it so community or others can see, but I would like to just take a few minutes and hear your thoughts in response to that first column where we're going to ask you. I didn't have the benefit of hearing your prior conversations around goals, and I'm just looking to get a sense. Why is goal number 1 essential? Why is number 2 essential? Why is number 3? And then we'll work a little more of our time tonight on, given those district and board goals, what do you most need your superintendent to lean into this year? So I'll give you a moment to just think a half a minute about, and feel free to pick any one of these goals and comment on why is it essential. If the spirit moves you, you can speak to all 3 of them, but looking to hear that first goal, student achievement. Would somebody weigh in on why is that an essential goal for your district? And repeats are great.
I think Julie summed it up well. That's why we're all here, to have successful students. I particularly was interested in Portrait of a Graduate because I think our high school programming has been going toward getting kids ready, you know, from school to work, and what do we want that graduate to look like. And I think this is a great addition to all of that hard work that people are doing, because we'll have a more concrete idea of what it's going to look like to graduate from Boone High School.
Thank you. And Board President Melhouse, I forgot to ask you, are we on first or last name basis? It makes no mind to me. I'll just have to work a little harder at last names.
We can be on first name. Only reason I use last names is for the people who are listening in who might not know, but we can go first names. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Pam. Somebody else want to comment on why goal 1 is essential, important for you as a district?
I would mention that standards-based grading is brand new this year. And so a lot of education and training needs to be done with the staff. And so that's why that is a vital goal with an under student achievement.
Nice, thank you. And you're only going to get as far with students as your staff is well prepared. So makes a ton of sense. Anyone else want to comment on that first goal before we would move to the second goal?
I think real simply, if you're not successful at goal number 1, number 2 and 3 don't mean anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's nice.
That's why it's always our number 1 goal, because if we're not making kids successful or giving them the opportunities, then there's no reason to build a new elementary school.
Nice. And just seeing the layout on your goals sheet where it's number 1 and off to the left, it's no secret here that it's number 1 for you guys. So tickled to see that. Anybody else? Last call for goal 1 before we would move to goal 2 and 3.
I'll just comment 2 and 3 are questions number 2 and 3 across the top. Social emotional learning when it comes to COVID, and all this is going to be very dependent upon COVID. How long we keep these kids in the classroom? If we go outside the classroom to online learning or hybrid, social emotional learning, those kids are going to be even more stressed out. The community's going to be more stressed out. The parents are, the state of Iowa, everyone's going to be more stressed out. So it's going to become a tougher and tougher issue we have to be cognizant of. Ideally, we're able to keep everyone in the classroom as much as possible, but our neighbors to the west found out already that they've had to go to a hybrid model just a week and a half in because of too many kids having to be online.
Mm-hmm. Good. Thank you. Critical. Thanks for kind of running right across the row, Brian. How about that second goal? And again, feel free if I bypassed you too soon, you're welcome to circle back and say I have an afterthought about one of the previously mentioned goals or areas. Goal 2, family engagement and communication. Why is that essential for Boone Community Schools?
I'll start and speak to that a little bit. I think from when we first started this process, and especially with like all the COVID surveys that we sent out, and as we've talked about the new schools, it's been very essential for us to be communicating often. We want to be a transparent board. We want to be a transparent school district. So we want to be having that on the goal so that we can make sure that we're putting that often in there, to be just reminding, like, we need to be communicating often, over the top sometimes.
Yeah, and what can seem like a lot of communication on our part, if you're on the receiving end, it may not seem nearly as much. So appreciate your comments about over the top so that the word gets out. Thank you. Someone else, why is that community engagement and communication an essential and a critical goal?
I think it's important to make sure we have timeliness in our communications, so that people aren't wondering, well, we haven't heard from the school yet. What's going on here? You know, and I think Julie is very aware of the timeliness. She's already speaking to things that might or might not happen in the future. But you know, I think timeliness is very important when you're talking about that family engagement.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll just mention that I really do know that parents appreciate acknowledgement and being listened to. And I think that's very important.
Yes. And even if you find yourself scratching your head wondering, why is Harry having us talk through this again? For some community members, this may be one of the earlier on or the first times they hear this conversation if they haven't heard prior board conversations about it. That third one, facilities and budget management, related facilities. Why is that an essential piece?
I'm just going to circle back to 2, which brings in number 3. That is, the more we have communicated out in the last 6 to 12 months time, the more response we've gotten from the community, the more positive response we've gotten from the community. In fact, we got 13 people that are willing to take their time to serve on this board is indicative of that. The fact that we had over 2/3 of our students' parents respond to our last survey. When I first started on the board, if we did a survey, we got 300 people. We were happy with those numbers. So last time we had over 1,500. That's great. And the more engagement they feel, the more they're going to be supportive of spending money to help the school improve even further and getting this bond issue successfully passed. So we got to keep that family engagement and communication up in order to see goal number 3 realized. We've always put budget management in someplace in our board goals. Fortunately, our school district in the last several years, thanks to Mr. Lewis and Mrs. Newbold before him, have us in a solid budget state. We want to keep that. But the new land for the elementary school, and we've got 2 buildings there, older, with just 2 days away from at any time having a major heater go out or a major roof problem that could force us to go into a lot of our cash reserves. Not to mention, we've got a lot of staff that have to go between 2 buildings now. And it sure would be great to have them all in one building and not having to have 2 separate secretaries. A lot of other duplication of sources.
Sure. Thank you for circling back, Brian. The facilities budget management. A couple of folks want to weigh in on why that's an essential area. And Brian, you've already spoken to pieces of it. What else would you guys add, or repeats are okay?
I just think for the safety and well-being of our littlest students, we have to do something. Our buildings are falling apart. I toured both buildings. Pam and I both toured the buildings late in the end of last year before all this happened. And or maybe it was in the fall. I can't even remember. It's been so long ago now. But they're falling apart. We have to think of, these are our littlest students in these 2 buildings, and we need to be watching out for their welfare.
Thank you. Someone else?
I think it also ties back into goal number 1 of student achievement. I think some of our youngest kids are missing out on opportunities because it's not feasible or not possible to have some of the technology and other things that would, enable them to do more, show what they're capable of. And the budget management, the unfortunate reality of today's world is that a lot of decisions are based on finances and liability. Right? In the perfect education system, we wouldn't have to worry about either one of those, and we could spend what we want and do what was absolutely best for our kids. So putting ourselves in a good financial spot so that we're able to do things as they come up so that we can improve achievement or give more opportunities is critical, which is why we've focused on that, to put ourselves in the best possible spot to give our kids those opportunities.
That's nicely said also. Thank you. And thanks for engaging on this. Again, if something strikes you in a bit, you can circle back to an item. I'd like to move us to this middle column now. What does the superintendent need to lean into? And what's realistic for her to be able to accomplish between now and next spring, say May? It's an arbitrary date I put in, but somewhere in that range. And out of this, hopefully what shakes out off the conversation from this middle column is clarity on goals for your superintendent. And I want to make a comment about the bottom row here, the other. So even though your district clearly has 3 high priority, high leverage goal areas, and it makes a ton of sense, a ton of sense that your superintendent gives prime time to those goals. I inserted that column to provide a chance for her to also talk about, even in her first 3 months here, and then for you to talk with her as a board about, are there any other key areas that really you're counting on, hoping, expecting, needing her to lean into? So I'm going to flip it for this part and ask your superintendent to make some comments about that middle column. And then we'll circle back and ask board members to elaborate. You've done key work on this left-hand column, the district goal. So Julie, if you would please talk through, board members, feel free to take notes. I'm going to make some notes here along the way, not looking to get bogged down, but Julie, for that first goal area, student achievement, that district goal, and that's a long-term goal, that's a multi-year goal. But given that, what do you see that you probably as a superintendent will likely need to be leaning into most heavily to continue to move your district toward that goal?
So I think for goal number 1, the portrait of a graduate is the work that I need to lean into. That does encompass the other 2 components as well, but I think portrait of a graduate is more of a systemic viewpoint as well. Not that the others can't and aren't, but portrait of a graduate is something that I shared during my interview process. It's something that has been an interest of the district since I've started, and I do see that as my role in helping to guide that and facilitate that process. So that would be, if you're looking at which one of those items I would lean into the most, it would be the portrait of a graduate. Yet I'd still be working on the other items. It's just the majority of my time and energy would be going toward the portrait of a graduate from my perspective.
And board members, comments about that or clarifications or anything you'd want to ask of your superintendent? I'll just say Superintendent Julie, so I'm not worried about last names yet, but anything you want to ask of her or clarity around that goal or reaction, what she sees herself leaning into. If somebody's speaking, might be muted, it sounds like. Anybody else?
All right, I'm muted. It was me.
No problem.
I think each of these areas is in a different level right now. That is standards-based grading is something we've been working on, and we're pushing instituting fully in the high school this year, and getting up and running in the elementary and middle school. So that project is maybe, shall we say, 50-70% done. Social emotional learning, that's going to be more of a year round, and that's more in the 2, 3, 5 year, and then the portrait of graduate, something that hopefully we'll be able to have fully developed by next summer, so we can move on forward. I think those are the ways the board has been looking at it so far.
And given that would make sense, and that your superintendent's going to lead into that piece more heavily. It's got maybe a closer date to bringing it into order. Cool. Anyone else before we'd ask her to reflect on that second area and what that means for what she leans into?
The only thing I would say is back on that standards-based grading. Yes, I agree. Portrait of a graduate is probably the main thing she should be leaning into. But standards-based grading, as I said, is new in some cases this year. So we need to know the comfort level of the faculty at some point too.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I think I would probably maybe offer a different perspective, in that my opinion would be that the majority of our time and effort should be focused on establishing some baseline social emotional health for our students, just because of the challenging and unique year that they have. I think portrait of a graduate is something that could potentially be stalled a year if that allowed us to invest more in the social emotional aspects of our students, just because of the challenges that we're predicting for this year.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things, and that's part of the reason, thank you, you're ahead of the curveball here, for the that third column, is anything you talk about, right, is subject to there's a lot of unknowns. Where are you a month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now? So very much appreciate that, given the state of the world and the country and the impact of COVID, et cetera, that it would be wise to continue to pay attention to that. And in the next activity, we're going to talk a little bit about ongoing conversations throughout the year about these goals and progress toward them. And that will provide you a good opportunity with your superintendent to be ongoing way talking about what needs adjustments. Julie, would you have any additional comments about that element and the times we're in now?
I don't disagree that the social emotional learning is of the utmost importance, especially in the times of COVID-19. I guess when I was thinking of leaning into is the direct influence that I would have as a superintendent. I see the social emotional learning being something that would be probably enacted, and the day-to-day would probably lie on the shoulders of my administrative team more than myself. Not that I wouldn't still be facilitating and directing that, but I guess that's where my perspective was coming from with regard to what I was leaning into. When I think of leaning into, I think of my personal involvement. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So that's what I find useful about a conversation like this, to make sure that we're all kind of looking at things in the same manner. So I know exactly where I should be putting my direct influence and direct work, which areas I need to be doing that in.
Anyone else want to comment on that first goal area before we move to the second?
I'd just like to add that I think, from what I have observed and listened to, and I find that Julie facilitates her leadership team well, and you know what happens at the buildings, I think she's well aware of and supportive of.
Mm-hmm. And that marries up well with her prior comments about some of these areas are going to be touched more directly probably by the administrative team. And obviously she's, as you just said, she's working with and guiding and supporting their work on that as well. Thank you. Anyone else before we move to goal 2? Okay. Superintendent Julie, would you please speak to what you see yourself likely needing to lean into around that family engagement and communication?
So I think, and you didn't have the benefit of being part of the conversation previously, Harry, but that I think the piece that I would be leaning into is the part where it's two-way communication and not just one-way communication, making sure that not only are we sharing out information, but are we receiving information to help us make the best decisions that we can make, and working together with our families and our community with the variety of tasks that have been that we've had in front of us. So the district put a lot of energy and effort into helping to improve the perception of the things that we're doing, being able to kind of tell our story and what we do in the district. I think that that has been extremely successful, and we've gotten a lot better at it's hard for educators to brag about what they do. I'm just going to put that out there. And I think something that has gone very well for the district recently that we need to continue is continue to share the positive stories that are coming out of our schools and in our district. But with that also, how can we continue to engage our families in two-way communication and not solely be the one providing the information, but also us learning from our families and our community. So I see my direct influence being with regard to ensuring that we are providing formats and venues for our stakeholders to have a voice in the decision making that we're doing.
Thank you. Board members, comments, reaction, additional thoughts?
Well, this is Pam again, and I think COVID-19 has really inhibited some of the things that Julie really intended to do. You know, we picked up from her interview that she was very community-centered and wanted to get in the community and meet people and go to the places where people go and things like that. And Nobody goes to those places as frequently as they once did. But she's been out there going to different meetings and trying to work with the, city fathers and the Chamber of Commerce. She's trying to do as many of those things as are possible or safe.
Thank you. It opens a good doorway again as you think about the spirit of some ongoing checkpoint discussions with her throughout the year to keep asking, how's that piece going? Here's what we're seeing. What else do you need? What's getting in the way? It's a really great setup for that ongoing conversation, Pam. Thank you. Other board members. Okay, then let's move on to facilities budget management. And again, you certainly can circle back on something with additional thoughts or afterthoughts. Superintendent Julie, what are you seeing yourself likely and recommending that you need to lean into most heavily around that third goal area?
So I think this is the one goal area that our district has realized how COVID-19 can affect the maybe the pace at which we intended to accomplish some of the goals we had set previously. And I would say that would be the same thing. When I interviewed, our plan was to have a possible bond in the fall. And now we're looking at the spring. So I do think it's part of my role goes along with that community engagement and helping to educate our stakeholders in understanding why there's a need for a new elementary building and why it's essential. It's not a want, it's an actual need, and helping our community see that it will not raise their taxes, but instead provide their students with an opportunity to better learn, just as Jeremy alluded to earlier, and Joy has spoken to this as well, that there are some things that we've been hindered by with the physical facilities that we've had to work within. And if we're able to get a new elementary school, that would provide us new opportunities. So I see my role as being able to clearly communicate that. I do think COVID-19 will hamper that in the fact that typically you do that through a lot of focus groups, a lot of in-person conversations, and how that might need to look different, but the need is still going to be there. So that would be what I would see as what I need to lean into.
I guess I just want to mention real briefly on that one that our teachers at both of those schools are doing wonderful jobs with what they have. And so I do want to emphasize that we have got some great teachers doing what they can in that space, but so much more could be done. So I agree with Julie's interpretation.
Thank you for adding that in. Any other board members want to comment about where Superintendent Julie sees herself needing to lean into as you move forward? Okay. Then would you also comment, Superintendent Julie? I probably haven't been called Superintendent Julie much for a long time, but any other key areas that you see, and then we'll ask board members to also weigh in, but anything else that's kind of on the front burner for you?
An area that's on the front burner for me is special education. So that would be an area that I would envision a lot of time and energy of mine going into helping our special education staff, both teachers and associates, providing them with some professional development that I think we haven't had the opportunity to provide in the past, in addition to decreasing our special education deficit that we currently have. I know that that's something that was weighing heavily prior to me attaining the job, and that is something that I would also see being something that I would lean heavily into, is both the professional development side as well as decreasing the deficit that we currently have in that area.
Okay, thank you. Same format. Board members, comments, reactions, additional thoughts about those two areas of parts of special ed that she commented on or sees herself needing to lean into.
I think that when we interviewed Julie, that her expertise in the special ed area came through loud and clear, and it's something we were very excited about. I think that may be why that area didn't make it onto our goal list, because we knew that it was a personal area of expertise for her, and regardless of what the goals were, it was going to be a priority for her personally to push us in the right direction in that. So that's something I'm excited to see what happens this year also.
Cool. Anybody, any other board members? Thanks
Yeah,
for acknowledging that.
I think Jeremy summed it up quite well. You know, that expertise in the area of special ed was what we were looking for, and he stated it well.
Mhm.
I would add one more thing. Because of COVID-19, I think career and technical education is kind of taking a little bit of a hit. We focus on the general education programs, and so maybe not this year, but for next year, we need to, see what we can do to grow those programs and to help our students in those areas. Again,
And yeah, thanks for wording that. Was that Pat? I can't see everybody on my screen right now. Yeah, thank you for wording it that way. It opens one of the neat parts. If you're in my shoes and you see some long-term goals like this, I said earlier, good for you. You also have the flexibility because these are long-term goals. Then you just next summer, or as part of Julie's evaluation process in the spring or early summer next year, you just revisit and have the same conversation. Okay, to keep us, are these three big goal areas still the right things? And you revisit the second column. What does Julie need to lean into next year that will continue to help you move forward in your journey? And by having that other row at the bottom, things like, Pat, your comment about the future, career, et cetera, technical ed, you can revisit those sort of things. So I would ask then just quickly, you've kind of nailed several things, but I want to ask you to just think about the third column, impact of COVID. You've mentioned some things where that's already had an impact potentially on the facilities, engagement, and on that second goal, community visibility engagement for Julie. Any other comments around the impact or the potential impact of COVID on any of these three goals or the four areas Julie's mentioned she's going to be leaning into? What would you say? Anything else or summary comments?
I think that we've already talked some about how COVID's going to affect each of these areas or how it has affected. For instance, a new building, how it's delayed us by a few months' time. Yeah, and the family engagement and community engagement, she's not been able to get out quite as much as she'd like because there aren't quite as many meetings. Although I know she's been at least one football game I was at. I saw her there, and I know she's attended some Rotary meetings where she's been a speaker at already. But again, if COVID gets worse again, those meetings are going to disappear, and those school activities, football games, etc., may disappear. I'm hoping we're going to still be playing football 4 weeks from now. And we've already talked in goal number 1 as far as if we have to go to hybrid model or even worse, going to totally online learning, how our social emotional learning is going to be much tougher on those kids. Standards-based grading, throwing that on an all online program, that's really going to be confusing for our teacher to sort out. They're going to need some help and guidance and see how we can get through that. Those two issues, and might make Portrait of Graduate kind of take a back seat because we're having to work on those other two areas for 2 months, 4 months. I'd like to see it, COVID not causes any problems, but unfortunately, my other hat, I'm not so optimistic.
One part of, again, the reason for that third column there is I think as you establish the habit of coming back to these goals periodically, how's it going, what's working, and I think of them as mini evaluations, which we'll move into next for your superintendent, that this ought to be a standing question over the last couple of months. Some of it's going to be apparent. You're going to be having talked about it on the way, but that you kind of capture, codify what have been the big impacts of COVID the last couple of months and what's it mean for where we head the next couple of months and any adjustments that our superintendent or we as a board might need to make in these goals of COVID. It just becomes a reoccurring theme. You'll probably do that, but I'm encouraging and stressing that. So All right, I'd like, so that you wonder when's the end of this piece. If you'd bear with me and we with each other for probably the next 15 minutes or so, maybe faster, let's look at a couple of tools that can be of help to you. Any other comment around the COVID column before we move forward? Okay, we'll slide forward. So next page, excuse me, next page in your materials, click too fast. There are really two, the law that requires the board when you're conducting superintendent evaluation, and whether it's along the way during the year conversations or the summary eval, is to really look at two areas of performance. The first question's at the top of this sheet. How's the superintendent progressing in relation to these standards? And then the bottom question, how's the superintendent progressing in relation to her goals? And sometimes my heart goes out to boards and soups because it's easy to kind of fall into a trap and treat those as two silos. And I'd like to ask you to think about your district goals in the areas that Superintendent Julie just mentioned she's going to lean into, and lay those beside these standards for a minute. And let's quickly, we'll be able to knock off the overlap really quickly. So what might be most helpful to you board members is if you have your goals sheet open on your laptop, and I'll leave this one up on the screen. And I just want to ask you, when you, these text boxes are what I call board friendly everyday language, what each of these 6 standards mean. So would you just take a minute and skim those 6 text boxes? You'll hear me mention the name Carroll District worked with me about 2-3 years ago, and their work and some other boards led to the text boxes. Let's get this in everyday friendly language. So just skim those 6 text boxes. What I've probably heard from, oh golly, 30, 40 or more boards over the last couple of years is this has been really helpful to them. So I want to ask you this. When you think about your first district goal, student achievement, and in particular, while Superintendent Julie's going to be working with administrators across all 3 areas, but also heavily and directly involved in the portrait of a graduate, which one or two of these text boxes or standards do you see that first goal most tightly aligning with? What would you say? I'm looking for a call out. Standard 1, standard 2, what do you think?
I think you said both of them, Harry, 1 and 2.
Well, that'll teach me, won't it? That makes sense by the rest of you overall?
Yes.
I see the portrait especially aligning with 1 and just leaning into that student achievement goal. So just make a mental note or jot to yourself a note that standards 1 and 2, our first goal, our first district goal syncs up with that really well, pretty tightly. How about your second goal, family engagement and communication? Which one or more of the standards syncs up pretty well with that? Don't all talk at the same time.
Number 4.
Yeah, I think so. Others make sense to first blush anyway.
Number 6.
4, I
Mhm.
think 4 and 6 definitely, and maybe a little touch of 5.
Yeah, certainly. That whole visibility and connecting, building, trusting relationships. Absolutely. And then I'm going to move to your third goal. Which one or more of these standards does that one sync up with?
We knew all along you were going to say number 3, Harry, so we made it our third goal.
Well, I didn't know what you guys are going to say tonight, so I was interested to see. So then, This is a messing step sometimes. We set goals and we don't always look for the overlap. But as you guys just shared, I think what I'm hearing is your 3 district goals really pretty well align with all 6 standards, don't they? Or at least pretty well. So if, and yes, there are other things in your superintendent's work that she does beyond just the goals work, but in terms of an ongoing source of how's it going? What are we getting as a board? What are we seeing and hearing at the board table, in between meetings, written communications? That's evidence that the superintendent is making headway regarding all 6 of these standards. If you continue to use those goals conversations, you're going to be tending to the intent of these 6 standards. Somebody react in terms of, yes, that's how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. Does that seem more manageable? Trying to help demystify what sometimes happens with these 6 standards and district goals.
Well,
Reactions?
It
Yeah.
does. And it reminds me of when we used to have portfolios for principals and teachers
Yeah.
and collected all the different documents to prove that we were doing those things.
Yeah, there's that element you're going to hear me use a lot. My language, evidence of progress, indicators of progress, artifacts. Absolutely. Somebody else weigh in terms of, does the idea make sense if you're getting ongoing progress reports about the goals, you're having conversations around those, and your superintendent's leadership, you can be comfortable. You really are addressing, you're gathering information, artifacts, evidence about progress on these standards. Reactions. And Julia, superintendent, does that make sense? How might that be helpful to you?
Yes, for sure. Having the overlap is important.
I think that I'll just cut to it a little bit, Harry, is that Jeremy will recall our old board the last couple of years, we used, you mentioned the Carroll plan earlier. And that's what we did the last couple of years, was using the Carroll plan of evaluation, which basically we took I think at the time we had 4 board goals as opposed to 3, and then put what would be evidence of satisfactory and exemplary and unsatisfactory improvement. We'll put those in single word statements. And then every time we met, we were able to circle, where were we on those? Were we in the needs improvement? Were we in the adequate, or were you in the exceptional? And that way, when we did those 4, we were still covering all 6 standards by the state, from the state requires us. And if you look here, we can, my thought would be to perhaps structure our goals 1, 2, and our board goals 1, 2, and 3, knowing that we're at with goal number 1, if we see improvement in those areas, we're covering standards 1 and 2. We got board goal number 2. If we see improvements in those areas, we're covering 4, 5, and 6, and then 3 is covering 3. Now, we can do both, and at the same time, have an idea of how we're progressing through our board goals throughout the year, at the same time as working through the superintendent's goals.
Spot on, exactly, yes. Beautiful.
That's kind of what I have been thinking about all along here. I think Harry's done a very good job of bringing us to prove or to show what I was eventually thinking about, was doing something like that, so we can cover the goals. We'll put them into language that we all understand, as opposed to reading through this right hand of the standard one, an educational develop or promote. When we used to do that one, half the board would put things that they thought were great or bad in standard 1, whereas some other people would talk about the same things that be down in standard 4. And it became very confusing. And so that's why we went the last couple of years to the Carroll model,
Yeah.
and found it a lot less confusing because everyone was talking about the same thing at the same time, because we had a better idea which each of those goals objectives were.
Well, and that's nicely stated. And I'm delighted to hear that, Brian. And I would just circle back and go, the right-hand column, that stuff, that the language in there reminds me probably when Julie was in grad school to get her superintendent certification. That's what the language looks like. But board members don't talk that way. Your community members don't talk that way. It doesn't make sense. So if you were scratching your head 30 minutes ago going, why is this guy painstakingly walking us through the goals? I have just found when we do that, this conversation and syncing them up with the text boxes just happens in a minute and a half, like you guys did. We can make this less complicated than we've made it in the past. We, not you guys. I'm saying the state, our office, others. So good. Anybody else comments? I want to show you one last quick tool and we'll wrap this up. Any other comments about the overlap here? All right, then I'm going to move to this tool. And Board President Brian and Superintendent Julie, you let me know if you want to, or if that's coming later, or you want to do a quick peek right before we wrap up and maybe one page of that modified instrument from Carroll. But here's a suggestion. In getting ready, in planning for tonight, Board President Brian, Superintendent Julie, and I did a conference call last week. And we just talked through the big areas. What are we hoping to accomplish tonight? And Brian, your thinking was incredibly helpful as I figured out what should we lean into tonight for my planning. And one of the things that Board President Brian mentioned is that you had some conversation around the idea of maybe every other month or quarterly, something more than once a year, doing what I call quick checkpoint performances or mini evaluations. You could have the whole blown instrument in front of you, but you also could do something as simple as this. You could have this one-pager sheet. You could have your district goals in front of you, have this page in front of you, and I'll send you some notes about the areas Superintendent Julie mentioned she'd lean into. And it would be doable in a 20, 30-minute conversation. That's what I hear from board teams. The law allows you to go into closed session and you have the conversation with the goals in front of you and the progress reports you've been getting along the way. And you just have some conversation. And after you warmed up and talked for a while, somebody, board president, board secretary, somebody captures the big notes. What progress and strength and how do we feel about that our superintendent has made over the last 2-3 months in relation to these goals and the standards. And then area 2, you have the conversation. Is there anything that needs more time and attention? Could have been impacted by COVID, could be something else that comes up. Be as specific as you can. And number 3, you have this conversation. If we're going to make adjustments, COVID has caused us to do X, or something we didn't see coming has caused a delay in portrait of a graduate, whether it's COVID or something else. What adjustments need to be made over the next couple of months or the rest of the year? So you look to your superintendent and your own expertise as a board and you say, okay, gang, what are the roadblocks and what are we going to do to work around those? If you use this sort of one-page form 3-4 times a year, you capture, and it's on one page on purpose, don't get too long, and you capture the big ideas in print. And I've talked to Mitchell. He said he's the keeper of personnel folders or whatever. He or his department drops this summary from a month or 2 from now into the folder. The next time you do a mini review 2-3 months from now, you pull this back out. Might be the same stuff, might be some different things that pop up. And you do it again a 3rd time in the spring. If you do that well, the board teams I've worked with or talked with say, then doing the summary next spring or summer, May or June, it's so much easier. We're not relying on memory and allowing amnesia to sit in. We've actually been keeping some records along the way, and there aren't any surprises. It's strictly a matter of summarizing what we've been talking about along the way. Okay, Harry's going to be quiet and ask you guys to react to that idea of some shorter mini reviews during the year, capture a few key notes, how that may help you at the end. Thoughts, please?
I think we already agreed that that would be the best bet for us to do throughout the year, is to do them on a periodic basis rather than trying to wait till the end of the year.
Thank you. Someone else?
I agree with Pat, and I also think that that gives superintendent the opportunity for some guidance. So
Absolutely. And to make adjustments or
Yeah.
to say, holy smokes, did this catch me off guard? You can have that conversation. Yep. And I think between the prior page with the goals right beside it in your district goals and something like this is a short one pager, that puts you in good shape for these mini reviews. Then when you get to a summary sheet and Brian or Julie, do you want to now or later pop up one page of that instrument that you guys have been using from Carol that you adapted? And I have a copy I can pull up if you want that Mitchell had sent to me.
I don't have it ready.
You want me to pull her up here for a minute?
Yeah, real
Yeah,
quick.
just pull.
Okay, sure. So the front part is why we use this. Here at the bottom are the 4 kind of ratings. And then it's simply one page for each standard. If that's too much, you can shorten it, do whatever you want. But the idea is that those indicators of progress that your superintendent, what I see SUPs do across the state is they take first run at filling in some of those key indicators, what we would use, share that with you as a board ahead of time, and then you monitor, and it gives you a chance, like tonight, the lean into conversation. It gives you a chance to speak into, what about this? Could that also be an indicator? And you can hammer that out. And then this is for the summary, the end of the year piece, that up at the top, you would select a 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then here's the big one for you, the bottom, comments. Because anybody can pick a number, but it's only going to be as helpful as, why did I give the rating a 3 or a 4 or a 2 or a 1? And you would list something in there. Okay, I have dry mouth. You've been great listeners, but you engaged real well the first 2/3, and then I talked a bunch here. Summary comments or thoughts. Again, the intent was in 45 minutes or a little longer to kind of revisit the tools, have you think about your goals, your superintendent's goals, and kind of paint a picture so you'd be in good shape to move forward as a whole board, new board members and all, as you work the feedback, how it's going, and the evaluation process this year. Overarching comments or thoughts?
Thank you very much, Harry. Or
Harry,
who has some comments here?
I'm just saying it's clear and concise and should be very usable.
Great. Anyone else?
I was just going to say thanks. This would have been very helpful to me a couple of years ago. I think it's a great way to start. Some clear expectations in a process that we can all follow and be on the same page about. So thank you very much.
Sure. And you guys will do a good job with it this year. So come election time a year from November, should there be any, you're going to have at least one new board member this fall, but should there be any others, you've established a habit or a pattern and leave the next board in a better spot than you were before. Mm-hmm.
Harry, I went to a meeting in Ames put on by IASB, and I think you went over this at that time, and it was clear then, but this is even clearer now. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Pat. I'm working on voice recognition. Julie, from superintendent's perspective, any observations or thoughts you have? And then we'll be done here.
I just appreciate the conversation because it's very easy to think you're working on the work that you're supposed to be doing, and then find out later that maybe that wasn't what the intent was. So I think having those open conversations is crucial for both parties, both the board and myself. So I look forward to being able to utilize these tools. This would have been helpful in previous situations. That clarity provides for better work too. So hopefully it'll get us off to the right start.
I would ask a 1 to 2 minute favor of you. Mitchell, do you have that link, or were you able to have sent that out?
It's in their email right now.
Here's what I'd ask of you. Here's the reality. If a board says, yep, we'll fill out this 1 minute feedback sheet at the end of tonight's meeting, most of the time I'm lucky if I get half of them back. So if you could take 1 or 2 minutes, it won't take any longer than that, I promise you, and fill out a quick feedback right now. You'll run through SurveyMonkey. I'll get a chance to peek tomorrow at what was most helpful, what wasn't, and that'll help me as I write a quick summary letter, so you've got something tangible in hand that reflects tonight's conversation. So if you could do that right now. And Superintendent Julie and Brian, I'll work with Julie on some of the language. I was writing notes fast and furious, but she can help be my double check here what I missed, so you have something tangible in hand within the next week or two. Okay, thank you so much for your time. Joey, good luck in your new situation, and thanks for taking a minute to fill us out now. I'll mute myself, and after you've had a minute or two to do this, I'll disconnect, and thanks again.
You're muted.
On purpose, I'm muted. Thank you.
Okay. Looking to see who all is done. Good. Look, Dr. Nystrom's done. Are you two done over there? Julie, are you done? Okay. Okay. We're gonna move on to our next topic, which is technology bids. Well, you guys finish
Thanks,
those
Harry.
up as we're getting going here.
Okay, so we sent RFPs out to several vendors. We have those listed in your board notes. The one that we received back was from SHI, and we had asked for both Chromebooks and Duets for the little ones. So that bid came back at $243,600. and I would recommend approval. The funds that would pay for this would include ESSER, GER, and SAVE funds.
Okay. And since I'm not familiar with all the alphabet soup, I know the SAVE funds, but can you refresh my memory what SR and GER are?
So that's because those are related to our COVID-19. So ESSER is the COVID-19, and GER is a specialized technology fund that is to try and increase connectivity for families. So they were funds that were not available to us pre-COVID-19.
Thank you very much for that explanation.
What's the split? How much is coming from SAVE?
We're looking at doing 50,000 for right now. If we have to change that down the way we can. Right now we have a little over 5 million in the account in SAVE. So we have enough to help us with this project.
So really with the additional funding that's available, it's kind of a no-brainer to do it with the very minimal impact on our SAVE fund.
Yes, for sure.
And we have also talked about how to make sure this becomes part of our routine renewals. The last thing we'd want to do is have a one-time purchase and not be able to continue with that technology. And so Bob, Mitch, and I have had conversations about how we would be able to incorporate that into our budget as well.
Any further discussion on this item?
What is the time frame for us to get all these computers and tablets?
Well, hopefully we'll get them soon. On the bid, it said to allow 6 to 8 weeks, depending on where they're at and how soon we can get them. So hopefully within 8 weeks.
Okay. Good questions. Any further questions?
Yes, will these be replacing some of the old things that Bob has gotten out to students already, the older technology?
Yes. Yep. So this will go in, I believe, Page and Lincoln and Franklin, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. There's no further discussion. I'll entertain a motion to approve this technology bids for SHI for a bid of $243,600.
I move to accept the bid.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Stevens, second by Dr. Nystrom to approve the bid, technology bids for SHI of $243,600. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next up is Street Smarts Driver Education Renewal Form. Ms. Stevens?
This is the driver's education organization that provides driver's ed for our students. And so it's simply a renewal of the contract that we've had for the 2021 school year. It's moving from $360 to $380 per student though. So an increase of $20 per student.
I find it interesting that the gas price doesn't go up until $3.25 per gallon, which is like a 50% increase. So it must do fairly well if it's only $2.10 a gallon. They're not asking for any more money for another $1 a gallon.
Yeah.
Those rates were based on the last time when I was still teaching, and when it increased to that amount, it was when gas went up to 3 something a gallon. So when I just opened it and looked at it, I was thinking maybe it would have gone the other way a little bit. So a little surprised by that.
Okay. Any
This is-
further discussion?
Something the students contribute toward, or is this all on us?
Oh, the students pay for it unless they're free and reduced.
That's what I wanted
And
to
then
verify. Thank you.
we contribute for the free and reduced.
That's what I wanted to verify. Thank you.
How much does the district? How much does the district contribute for the free and reduced students?
If they're free, we cover the total cost. If they're reduced, then it's the prorated amount typically.
190.
Yeah, it's around half.
Okay, do I have a motion for the approval of the contract with Street Smarts Driver's Education?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Reverend Weber has moved and Dr. Nystrom seconded to approve the Street Smarts Driver's Education renewal. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next on our agenda is a brief update about the EDGE program. Ms. Strupa.
So I had asked if Lindsay would be available to share with you just an update as to where we are, especially since this is a new position that you put into place late last spring. It is definitely a position that was necessary in our progression with CTE coursework as well as the EDGE program as it stood. It does say that Lindsay and administration will speak, but I believe Lindsay is prepared to share with you the update, and our administrators are waiting in the wings to answer any questions you may have.
Good evening, you guys. Can you hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Just wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much for approving this position. It absolutely is necessary. And in my 15 days at it so far since school started, it's been very rewarding. Dr. Janes and Mr. Byam really did a terrific job building the bones of this program. And as it grew, we realized that we need someone to oversee it, to keep up with all the kids and the needs and the outreach that it takes in this position. So it's going to be fun. One thing over the summer we did is network with a bunch of other communities that are implementing programs such as this, and many of them are starting from scratch. So we are very blessed that we have a program that's already built and does have so much inclusiveness for so many students already. Many programs are built around one area, and ours really picks up a lot of various students, and that is very important to us moving forward. One thing I wanted to tell you guys is it's great to hear me talk, but I know you want to see student examples and hear from them. So I will be sharing a quarterly update with you all on what our students are doing, sending pictures, getting testimonials, etc. So you should be seeing that come through in the future. We have 5 levels of EDGE. The two levels, Adventure with EBCE and Alliance with IJAG, we're already up and running pretty well. IJAG did have a 25% growth in students this year from 65 to 80, so that's exciting. They run a really nice program, and we're looking forward to seeing what those students do. Our Adventure levels, EBCE, Mrs. Frimmer really reached out to a lot of businesses to connect our students in that realm and has made a lot of connections even during COVID. So those two, like I said, we're already rolling. The next level of apprenticeship, we have several kids entering into that 3rd phase where they are out working in the businesses. And that has been really fun for us to see kids that are excited to enter into a field they really love and know that they want to do for their career. This week, we have been working on setting labs for our pre-apprenticeship kids to get them that hands-on experience that we know they seek in education. this area, we're really looking to recruit and use our counseling resources. As we know, there are many students out there that seek this kind of career, and we just need to give them the pathway to be successful with that. The next level is our Advantage course. This is the course that I teach, and we did not offer this course last year. It is all problem-based and real-world task-oriented. We have been seeking projects from the community as well as setting up our students with connections within community members. So in this last week, we had 2 pilots speak with a student. We were able to connect, thanks to COVID, I really do think, with a pilot in Indianapolis, as well as a Come and Go corporate pilot. That student really got a lot out of that experience, and now feels like he has a lot more answers and is excited. His mother actually reached out to me and just really thanked us for that experience, just for that networking opportunity. So I know the kids and parents are enjoying that level. We also this week have lots of people coming to us virtually. We had a sports information director from North Dakota State. We have a financial planner, a VP of a tech company, and John Walters from ISU this week. We are hoping that many of these connections lead to not only networking opportunities and projects, but hopefully some possible internships. As a formal alumni of Boone, this has been really enjoyable for me to connect with some really successful Boone alum and just to make that connection. So I've enjoyed that a lot. As far as the projects go for this class, we have, like I said, sought out some various partners. We're trying to make this very choice-based based on the kids' interest. We just had a really nice project come through from the city in doing some problem solving as well as some marketing. So we are eager to start that project and really just partner with the city and the school. As we know, a strong city helps build a strong school and vice versa. So that one's going to be fun. The chamber, we've had meetings with the chamber as well to start that partnership in not only networking and projects, but also for our students to present. Obviously, this is a project-based course and we want them to have those real world experiences. Our last level in EDGE is our advanced, and these are our students that have known for a long time really where their career interests lie. These students are really fun. There's a lot of work that goes into placing them, and COVID has not been easy as some of them are in the medical field. So we have gotten through and gotten several placements for some vets and PTs. We also have some placements occurring in the area of music and architecture and construction. So the balance is vast. You're going to hear about this in our update for the first quarter, but one of our students does an internship at as a veterinarian. Last year, Dr. McClure Boone was super gracious to let one of our students go intern and job shadow. So she got to see what that looked like. And this year she is, Dr. McClure is unable to host anybody this year, but we do have somebody in Nevada who is letting the student watch surgeries. And then on that off time, this student is going and learning equine management and seeing the vets from the side of that. So she has really enjoyed that so far, gained a lot of those EDGE core skills, and she will speak to that at any time you talk to her. So those are our 5 levels at this point. Obviously, those 5 levels encompass the 9-12 realm. But as we heard Julie speak about the portrait of a graduate, we are really looking forward to taking our EDGE and merging it not only into our lower elementary and our middle schools, but also into just pushing in those core skills into our main subjects. So that is going to be something that I'm really eager to partner with her and our administration on in growing our program and helping our kids become career and college ready. And obviously, Pat talked earlier about CTE and merging that. That's obviously, we want to talk more about creating those pathways for students to seek the jobs that they want to and build that in our capacity.
Good. That was one of my questions was what career checkout courses are these students that are out in internships taking, or have they taken? So that'd be interesting to know. And second, have you been in touch? I can't recall the exact name of it, but I could get you the email. The DE had a website of projects that were available for students to be able to do online. Has that been something you've been using or looking at?
Yeah, that was one of the biggest things we did the first week was it's the clearinghouse, the Iowa clearinghouse. And I'm actually taking, no problem. I'm actually taking a course in the evening to just learn more about how to merge those into your courses. There are a few that are of high interest to our students. So we have put in proposals to try to complete a couple of them. So I will keep you posted on where we end up with that. Yep. And Pat, I think your question earlier about the pathways, the students that are in the vet pathway very much are taking science and are in a lot of DMAC classes. The one that's heading into architecture has taken a lot of our STEM courses already. However, in saying that, I really do feel it would be really great to create more of a, Jill's going to laugh at this, but a procedure for these students to get into these internships and ensure that we are hitting those CTE courses prior to that. So
ones that are in vet should be taking some of those ag courses.
She has very much.
Zoe
so.
went all the way through the ag program.
Great, thank you. And I don't know if you've got construction anymore, but that's, yeah.
Yeah, the construction one, we actually meet on Friday as that one takes a little bit different pathway.
You still have some health science courses too being taught, correct?
Yes, Christy Phipps at the high school does a really nice job with teaching those, and anatomy, obviously those courses as well. So,
thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions from anybody? I'm happy to answer them, or Jill is, or Mr. Byam. But we know that we are going to grow this going forward. So if you guys have any connections for me or any of my students, we're obviously eager to partner. So just keep me posted on where you see.
How many students do you have in your class?
In the Advantage class, we got 9 through that. So yeah, it's a good start.
Yep.
Okay,
Kudos to
thank you very
Lindsay.
much.
Lindsay, I'm
Lindsay.
so glad you're on board.
Oh, thanks, Pat. I'm excited to use you as a resource. We need to set a meeting at some point here.
A big shout out to Lindsay and all the hard work that she's put forward. You can already tell that we're going to take some huge strides when it comes to EDGE. And that has been a discussion that we've been talking about all along, is how do we capstone everything that we're doing. You know that we talked about that early on, and what the pathways will look like. And so making sure that we funnel that in is going to be very important. CTE and EDGE should be one anyway. And also incorporating those core classes, you know, for somebody that might be into literature or something like that, also looking at things a little bit differently.
Exactly.
Thank you, Lindsay, for all that you're doing.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Lindsay, for coming tonight and giving us this presentation. Any other comments from the board members?
One thing, Lindsay, I'm sure that you've talked to ABC for your apprenticeship students. One thing that would be incredibly valuable for the apprentices that come through the shop was their first year of school requires 8 or 9 months of 4 hours every Tuesday night, and it's very basic. I think they could complete a lot of that work here and probably just as well at BHS, and the ABC gives those students the opportunity to test out of that year. And so if we could have something to prepare them to take that test, and if the majority of them were successful, they'd be miles ahead of any other apprentices in the state. Save them a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money. And I think we could do it just as well as ABC, at least for the first year.
Yes, that's really good advice. I know we have been just learning about that apprenticeship. And, you know, COVID with ABC has kind of put them on a back burner, but that is for sure an inquiry we will make. So good suggestion, Jeremy.
Thank you very much, and thanks for coming in tonight. Next, we're going to move on to the lane changes. Ms. Tripa, can you explain this?
Yeah, before you have the lane changes, they've all been vetted and approved. I would approve these lane changes that are before you. This represents a lot of hard work on the part of our staff and an extra classwork that they've taken to hone their craft. So congratulations to all of them that took the extra coursework, took advantage of some of the time that it took to do that. So I would just recommend approval. It does mirror, it's slightly more than what we had last year, but it's in the same range of cost with regard to lane changes that we've had in the past.
Questions, comments from board members?
I move to accept the lane changes.
Is there a second?
Second.
I thought I was alone up here tonight. It's moved by Mrs. Stevens and seconded by Mr. Pritchard to approve the lane changes. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion passes unanimously. Next is our special education delivery plan. Mr.
So if you had a moment to peruse the special ed delivery plan, you'll notice that it still has Dr. Menard's name on it, and that is because this is the plan that was developed last year. With COVID, I don't believe that the board had an opportunity to formally approve the plan, so that's why it's before you tonight. I did make sure that we have been able to validate that we have met the legal requirements of the special education plan that's required in the state, in addition to attaining the area education agency's approval of the plan as well. I would also share with you that I would anticipate coming to you with some changes. I know in speaking with staff, there are some components of the delivery plan that they would like to speak to further, have more conversation and discussion to fine tune some of the portions of the plan that were implemented or at least put into writing last year. So I am recommending approval of the plan with the caveat that this is a living, breathing document, and it is meant to be consistently revised and improved upon. Even if COVID had not happened, I don't ever want us to have a plan that we check off and put on the shelf for 5 years until it's time to redo. So I just would let you know that you will be hearing more about this plan as the year progresses, but I recommend approval of the plan that was developed last year.
Any further discussion? That was, correct me if I'm wrong, was this a routine 5-year update, or did we have to do this because of the state government recommendation just to the Boone schools?
So this is every 5 years. I believe it technically was the prior year, but you were able to get an extension for last year to continue the plan into last year to have it approved. But it's every 5-year plan. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any questions from board members? Hearing no further questions, is there a motion to approve the special ed instructional service delivery system as presented?
Make a motion to approve the special ed delivery plan as presented.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved by Reverend Weber, seconded by Ms. Stevens to approve the special education instructional service delivery system as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Motion unanimously passes. Next is the proclamation of the legendary teacher day. Ms. Trutha?
So this is something that I wanted to bring to you as a potential resolution from the board. 6 years ago, there is an individual who kind of started this. It's an effort to celebrate teachers that dedicate their lives to students. And I think every single one of us, both on the stage and those of you participating in this meeting, can speak to a teacher that made a difference, a positive difference in your life. So it's just a way to share the value of our teachers. September 24th of 2020 will be the next Legendary Teachers Day. The proclamation simply would state that we would be encouraging the entire community on that day to take time and contact the legendary teacher of your life, or do a shout out on social media, or maybe contact a loved one if your legendary teacher has passed, just to honor the work that they do on a daily basis. And so it's just a way to celebrate teachers. And I thought it would be a great way to put that in the forefront. I think COVID-19 has done that to some degree. I think we all appreciate teachers that much more than what we already did, but this is another way to highlight the value that they bring to each and every one of us.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Hearing no further discussion, is there a motion to approve the legendary teacher day
So moved.
proposal? Okay.
So moved, Brian.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Dr. Nystrom, seconded by Mr. Pritchard to approve the resolution for Legendary Teacher Day. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next up is the board standing committees. Mr.
So we have 4 standing committees that we approve every year. We do have a process to ensure that there is a sort of term limit for each of these, and we have taken that in consideration, contacted potential new members to each of these committees, and have attained commitment to be a part of these committees for those that are on here. I believe the Public Relations Committee, I just want to make sure that's the one.
We did not have a copy of that one in the.
Yeah.
You don't have a copy of that one?
Zoe and I are on that one.
Yeah.
There's one that I'm thinking of that I know still needed, that still needed a board appointment, and I'm trying to remember which one. Which one is it?
It's going to be the public relations one.
Is
That's
it?
the one that I
Okay.
was on.
That's the one. Oh, there it is. BCSD board member. I knew we needed that. So that would be the only vacancy that I would want you to make sure you pay attention to as you look to approve these committees, is we do need a board member to take that slot on the Public Relations Committee.
I'd suggest we defer that until we discover who our new board member would be.
I'm
And I
fine.
think, I'm not sure if you put on the materials review committee, the board president, I had to approve someone, and person been doing it for several years is unable to, so I called Jan Westrom, who's a retired teacher, had my position as school board president in the past, and she's graciously accepted that appointment for that committee.
So in essence, then we would have those that are laid out in front of you, with the vacancy that will remain until we have the board member, new board member join us, and we can make that addition at that time. But otherwise, we have the committees laid out before you for approval.
I do see Jeremy on 2 different committees. Do you want to continue to be on both of those committees, SIAC and CTE? That's what I have.
Yeah, but I don't mind being on those 2 committees.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, hearing no further discussion,
You
I'll take
do-
a
oh.
motion to approve all 4 of these at once.
As I'm looking at the SiAC one, there is a missing, because that would have been my wife. So the middle school parent is missing under the building representatives.
Which one?
So I thought we had one for that, but I will look into
Really?
that. That person?
We did.
I'll bring
Yeah,
Yeah, she,
we've got 2
That
middle
per-
school representatives on that. We've got 2 high school, Jen Peter and Emily Chapman, and then middle school is Elisa Weisbrod and Jeff
that-
Dyton.
and that was, she called today. It isn't going to be able to do it. So we're going to have to get somebody else to replace Lisa.
Lisa, okay. Okay.
Dan corrected.
Oh, well, we'll at least have one in the middle school until we find a second one, and Mr. Dyton is going to be on it, correct? Okay. Now, I will again entertain a motion for approval of these 4 committees as presented with the modifications.
Move to second.
Okay, the move by Reverend Weber, seconded by Mr. Pritchard to approve the
Actually, it was
SAC Committee, Public Relations Committee, CTE Committee, and Materials Review Committee as presented with modifications.
Brian, actually, I moved.
Was it you? Okay, I thought, okay, Mrs. Teeben. Unfortunately, with the Zoom meetings, it's kind of hard sometimes. I apologize. So, all
Right.
those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Motion passes unanimously. And next is superintendent report.
So I'm just going to keep it brief and speak to the opening of school. We're going into our 3rd week now of school, and I think I am joined by the administrative team in saying that it has definitely been a smoother start than any of us anticipated. We have had incredible compliance with regard to wearing masks by our student body. Our student body has been amazing in wearing their masks. They are very cognizant of socially distancing. The following, we have a lot of social distance stickers that help guide our students, and especially at the elementary level, that's something that has proven to be extremely helpful. I would argue even at the middle school and high school, I see students doing exactly what they need to be doing and helping make sure that all of us can continue to attend school in a safe manner. I think our mitigation strategies are thus far proving to be effective. We do call any students that are in quarantine on day 7 and on day 13 just to check up on them and make sure that they're feeling well. If they aren't feeling well, to be able to share what their next steps should be, let them know what needs to occur to be able to return after quarantine. And we have had an overwhelmingly positive response in making those calls. Our students that have had to quarantine have remained healthy, and our families have been extremely understanding under difficult circumstances. That is not a call that you want to hear, whether it be from a family member or a community member or from the school, to learn that your child needs to quarantine for 14 days. And they have been very gracious and understanding of the situation. Our teachers, again, we cannot say enough for our teaching staff in their ability to be flexible, to adapt to new and different situations. I'm very, very proud of the fact that we have mitigation strategies in place in this district that I haven't heard other districts have, with regard everything from our air purifiers to our barriers that extend beyond the table, not just on the table like most districts, but we have them where they extend beyond to help provide a safer environment for our students. And again, our teachers in their ability to have our students who go into quarantine have an opportunity to continue learning. I know there are districts across the state and across the nation that when they go into quarantine, they aren't provided anything when they go into quarantine. And so kudos to our staff for the hard work that they've done to try and make that as smooth as possible, and to our families for helping us ensure that their student continues to learn, because obviously without our families' support at home in helping their student engage in learning while they are at home, that wouldn't be possible. So it really is a team effort on the part of everyone. So I think, again, we are very happy with the start of school. We're going to continue to ensure that the mitigation strategies occur. If you are not already aware, those of you watching, our district does put our district metrics up on a daily basis. So currently today we are at 1.21% district positivity rate. That would be anyone who had a positive test, both staff and students, as well as the anyone who may be in quarantine with symptoms. That's what our district percentage was. And then today, as of 9 a.m. today, it was 8.2% for our Boone County positivity rate. So that is located on our district website, so you can look and see where we are. If you recall, we did enlist district guidelines that if we were to hit 2.5% or greater as a district, that we would move to hybrid. Keeping in mind that if we have an outbreak that is limited to a grade level or a building, that we could respond by building or by grade level and not have to switch as a whole district as well. So that's just one way that you can kind of keep up on what our positivity rate looks like and the possibility of moving into a different learning mode. We did put out a Q&A today, just sharing answers to questions that we had been getting. We had, from the very beginning of our Return to Learn plan, shared with families that they should be planning for a change in learning, just in case, kind of things to think about that we had asked our families to do. And as they were working through some of those possibilities, they were asking some questions. So we hope that our Q&A provided some answers to some of those questions. I'm going to reiterate that we are not moving to a different mode of learning at this time, but that Q&A is there to serve for your planning needs, and every family has a different situation to look at. So we want to work together to try and make, again, if we have to go into a different learning mode, make that transition as smooth as possible. If we do need to do that, I would just remind everyone that that's on a 2-week basis. So we would move into that learning mode for 2 weeks, reevaluate, and we may need to remain there or be able to come back on site. So we will make the decision based on the data that we have available to us. So that's just a little update on how the beginning of the school year has gone. I hope that all of the board members have heard some positive stories. I've had the opportunity to be in several of the buildings throughout these last couple of weeks, and I can't tell you how happy the kids are to be in school. They like being there. They may not want to admit it, but they do like being there. And it shows in the behaviors that we're seeing. They're very engaged in the learning. When I've been in the buildings, I was able to be in Middle and Franklin today, and this is week 3, and they're still very engaged in the learning. So again, hats off to all of our staff because they're making it happen, and hats off to our families for supporting us in ensuring their students can continue to learn both on site and online. Our online families have been fantastic as well, and they have been hearing from our staff and asking for feedback also. And again, the response has been largely positive and appreciative of all the work that our staff has put into helping ensure that their students can learn when they're online as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Tripa?
I know there's been some positive cases as expected, but I'm wondering Are there any cases that have been a result of spread through the school, or are they cases that have come in from outside of school and we've quarantined kids as a precaution?
As of today, I am not aware of any positive cases have occurred as a result of a spread within the school. They have all been a result of outside of this school setting.
Well, that's great to hear and a testament to our mitigation strategies. And just quickly, if people want to see mitigation compliance, they should drive through the Page school drop off or pickup. Seeing 4-year-olds standing 6 feet apart, every single one of them wearing masks, is really impressive. And shout out to Scott from 2 different people. I heard positive things about the middle school drop off and pickup, which I've never heard once ever anything positive about that. So whatever you're doing, good job there.
Again, I would say that's a shout out to the planning and preparation ahead of time. And Scott did take the initiative to contact the city and make sure that we completely redid our drop off pickup. That was a completely new process for our families. So again, kudos to our families for following the new procedures, because I was able to see how that worked for our families on day 1 and 2. So if there's ever going to be a problem, you'd think it'd be then, right? But it was extremely smooth. So again, kudos to our administrative team and our staff for making it all happen.
Okay, thank you very much. I would just like to point one thing out at the end. Tonight, school nurses had some questions for the Board of Health, or for myself and the Director of Public Health Nursing, and that dealt with if a family had a student or child who had been tested for COVID, what about the other family members? And the physicians in the community met today. And our recommendation is that if you have a family of 4 people, and let's say family member number 4 has upper respiratory symptoms and goes to their primary care physician or to the walk-in clinic, the respiratory clinic, and gets tested for COVID. Until that test result on family member number 4 comes back, the other 3 family members should basically consider themselves in quarantine too. All 4 of them should probably be staying home as if they are quarantined. So if member 3, if 3 and 4 are both students, student 3 needs to stay home as well as student 4. And then students 1 or family members 1 and 2 also should be staying home. If they're an essential worker, they should go to their job and come straight home, but not be milling around at other places. Call in your order to Hy-Vee for your groceries or to Fairway for your groceries, pick it up with minimal contact until you get that test result back. Even if family member number 3 is, or number 4 is feeling great, 2 days later, until that test result comes back, please do not send them back to school. We need to have that negative test result before that entire family comes back. So apparently there was some confusion about that. So I just wanted to make sure that was clarified tonight. And that is what the instructions will be to everyone coming through the facilities in Boone County. And I believe it's similar policy at the phone. With that said, we are done with our regular meeting. We have a couple closed sessions to go through. So I will adjourn at this time, and we will turn off the public. I just checked the live chat earlier. There was no comment.